Good morning, folks. Let's begin. Or good evening if you're joining from Hiral's neck of the world. My name is Emily Taylor, and I'm really excited to welcome you to our final Snake Week webinar of the inaugural Snake Week 2025 to celebrate the Year of the Snake. Between myself and Melissa Amarello from Advocates for Snake Preservation and Christina Zdenek from the Australian Reptile Academy and the IUCN Snake Specialist Group. We all want to welcome you to the Snake Week that we've worked so hard on, and thank you for enjoying all of the events this week. There's still a whole nother day after this yet to come. So please keep checking out our website, keep looking at our social media, and keep celebrating snakes with us. We decided that these webinars would be a really great way for spreading the word about snakes to people all over the world. We all got together and picked our favorite snake scientists from literally all around the world. And so we decided to choose Hiral Naik today to represent Africa for us. The way this is going to work is that we'd like you to keep your mic muted today, please. Any questions that you have that come up for Hiral, feel free to enter those in the chat at any time. She is going to wait until the end, though, and then when we're done before the hour, we'll have a little while where I will ask those questions that you have put in the chat, and I'll answer as many as I'm able to get to in the time. So please limit your chat to questions for Hiral or even comments, conversations about the wonderful animals that she's presenting. And so it is my huge pleasure to introduce Dr. Hiral Naik, which must sound amazing to her because it's a few days old, is my understanding, is that she has recently been crowned doctor, finishing her PhD. Congratulations so much. Hiral works with Save the Snakes, which is one of the most amazing organizations in terms of snake positivity, helping spread the word about snakes, funding research on snakes around the world, and just doing so much for our perceptions of these wonderful animals. And so with that, I am going to stop sharing my slides, and Hiral is going to start sharing hers. And then we'll begin.
Great, thank you. Does that look okay?
It looks great and we can hear you, so take it away.
Fantastic. Firstly, a huge thank you to Emily, Christina, and Melissa for inviting me. It is such an honor to present a talk on snakes in Africa, and also to be following up on some of the fantastic presentations this week. Yeah, so most of my my talk is really just some beautiful pictures of African snakes. I thought I'd take the opportunity to share some of the snake species that you might not necessarily see that often. So first of all, when you think of Africa and African wildlife, you immediately think of elephants, giraffe, leopards, and while these species are very cool, and I will not complain one bit about seeing these incredible animals in the wild, it is absolutely an incredible privilege to be able to share a landscape with these lesser known reptiles and amphibians, and it's really exciting to be able to share with you why growing up and being able to work with some of these species is not just a privilege, but just a fantastic way of being able to share with others why these animals are so important. So first of all, I was actually born in Zimbabwe, and then I grew up there as a child, and this was something really special because, you know, it's not often that people think of Indians growing up in Zimbabwe, and one of the very special things about it is that throughout my life I've been able to share that as an important kind of connection with Africa. And this kind of becomes irrelevant later on when I talk about snakes. So on the left is one of my favorite um, trees, which is a baobab, and it's something I kind of connect with quite a lot because it's when people think of Africa, it's not often that you think of something so fantastic. And being able to grow up as a young girl in a family that actually explored different regions of Zimbabwe, it was really fantastic. And one of the places we used to visit quite a lot was Matobo Hills in the south of Zimbabwe. And one of the really cool things I used to see there as a kid was these common flat lizards. And they're really cool because they're these rainbow lizards. And the colors just as a child can appeal to anybody really. And they'd just be in their hundreds over these rocky boulders. And of course, it was very natural to go and chase these little lizards around. But at that point, of course, I never really thought that they'd play a significant role in my life, let alone think a career in herpetology was even a possibility. So a lot of things changed in my early life. I left Zimbabwe because of the political turmoil, moved to India because that's where my parents were from, spent about a year and a half there. And the best career move for my sister and I, in terms of opportunities, was actually to move to South Africa. But all along the way, exploring the natural world, being outdoors, living as a naturalist in so many ways was always very something that was very dear to me. And so it was only natural for me to want to pursue a career in something that was related to wildlife, and something to do with working in the outdoors. But of course, I'll mention something because it's something that people don't often consider, and that is that when you grow up in quite a traditional household, there are certain expectations of you, and so one of the things I did was break those stereotypes. Kind of did what I wasn't necessarily supposed to do, and that was, of course, pursuing a career in herpetology. And it wasn't until I really started listening to someone that was probably played quite a significant role in terms of education and inspiring me to just become a little bit passionate about herpetology. And so when I joined the Alexander Herp Lab run by Graham Alexander, who is quite a prominent herpetologist in South Africa, it really kind of changed the way I started to think about herpetology, um, and just species dynamics. I remember being in my third year, and one of the courses that I took was biogeography. And of course, being taught by Graham, he used a lot of examples with reptiles and specifically snakes. And it just kind of blew my mind, the way species have evolved in different places, and just the kind of questions you could really ask as a scientist. And so this was kind of the point where things really started to change. And then I attended my first World Congress of Herpetology, my first conference really. And it was quite a big one, because I got to meet some incredible people, including Rick Shine, and to be able to be exposed to a world where people were working on such incredible species around the world. And also just in terms of the kinds of things that you could do. I think growing up in Africa, sometimes we have felt limited in the past. I think things are starting to change now, but you're kind of headed for certain career paths because of the opportunities that are available to you. And I think being able to see what other people are doing around the world was really incredibly special. So my master's project looked at the evolution of diet in Lamprophidae, which is a family of snake species in Africa with over 300 species. And it was a desktop-based study for various reasons, but it really allowed me to start exploring kind of natural history questions that I hadn't really thought about before, and especially evolutionary biology questions. And one of the most exciting things that came out of it was learning about the interesting behaviors of snakes, especially when it comes to their dietary patterns, and then being able to link that up to the different dentition types. And it was really cool to work on a group of snakes that not a lot of people know about. And of course, the only data that we really got were from field guides. So it's really cool because I think there's still probably so much more work that needs to be done in this group of snakes. But yeah, it was really fantastic to be able to find these patterns that work in this group. And I did manage to publish my paper, so I will share my website at the end, so you guys are more than welcome to have a read. And along the way, being part of a really cool lab, working on different species, I also got the opportunity to go out into the field and see all the cool things that other people are working on. And really think about, questions that you ask on working with different species. But I also knew that I didn't necessarily want to follow a traditional academic path. Now, working in Africa, there aren't really jobs available in herpetology. So you either climb up the academic ladder or you work in EIAs. And well, I was also a foreigner at the time, so it was quite difficult to kind of navigate things. But I was quite determined to kind of stick with working with snakes and trying to figure something out. And then I came across Save the Snakes. So in 2018, I started volunteering with Save the Snakes as a social media coordinator. And I was doing other work at the time, but really I just wanted to keep my foot in the door with snakes. And it was really great to be able to do that because I started learning about different snake species around the world. And I also had the opportunity to represent Save the Snakes at the 9th World Congress of Herpetology in New Zealand in 2020. And again, I think attending the World Congresses has really shaped a lot of my path in herpetology, especially in being able to connect with people and continually be inspired by them. So with Save the Snakes, I continued my work. And then in 2021, things changed a little bit, and I'll speak a little bit more about that. And then my transition now as the research and conservation manager. In 2023, I also did get to meet the executive director of Save the Snakes, Michael Starkey, at the 15th Herp Association of Africa conference here in Hoedspruit, which is the little town that I live in now. So in 2020, I received a grant from the International Herp Symposium to start a project on snake education. And I think this is probably one of the kind of defining things that have happened when it comes to me working with snakes kind of full time, and really believing that this is somewhere that I can really have some kind of impact. And it was also at the same time that some of my friends were buying a snake park, the Hoedspruit Reptile Center in Hoedspruit. And so I moved from Johannesburg, the city that I lived in, and moved to Hoedspruit. And Hoedspruit is in a fantastic little place, very close to the Kruger National Park. And I had no idea just how special a place it was really going to become. So Hoedspruit Reptile Center has been around for 40 years. But now with my friends taking over, Chris Cook and Jessica Briner, we were able to have kind of shared visions of what it really means to do snake education and conservation, and why it matters. I think it's a lot more relevant now than ever before. And we wanted to create something that was quite unique. And so we joined forces and created a little program that we called Snake Education and Community Awareness Program. And this program focuses on educating learners at schools, community members, healthcare professionals, and as well as assisting people or training people to become snake rescuers. We also have an anti-venom bank to be able to assist people that have been bitten by snakes. And of course, this is largely why we created the program. With snakebite becoming such a big challenge globally, we knew that there was some important things that needed to be done, at least at this local scale. Of course, this was obviously when COVID was still quite prominent. But luckily, we were able to still start our project and visit the schools in the area. Even though it started off slow, I think it has become something quite significant. So with our education programs, it's been quite fantastic to be able to build relationships with communities and groups of people that probably never would have really received this kind of education before. Maybe the conservation of other species. You do live in a town where conservation of other mostly endangered species is quite prominent. Yet, snake education, and again, this is probably in many other parts of the world, snake education isn't really something that people even talk about. So we joined forces with two local conservation organizations, Timberwati Foundation and Global Conservation Corps. And the reason we did this was because they already had existing relationships with the communities and the schools. And so it became a lot easier to work with them. I think it would have been a little bit more difficult just going into a community and telling them, hey, we want to educate you about snakes. One of the things that we've seen that has been quite impactful is interactions with non-venomous snakes. And of course, I think this is something that people talk quite a lot about, at least in the herpetology community. But it's also one of the most interesting things to see from a human behavioral perspective, because the moment you bring out a snake, you just hear gasps and just this immediate sort of fear. And one of the things that we've also been able to see in terms of a change in perception is that we've also got a lot of women working at Hood Reptile Center, and it's made a difference in the way the kids, and not just the boys but the girls, are actually engaging with us, and their willingness to interact with this snake. We also do demonstrations with different snake species, and three specific species: puff adders, boomslang, and cobras. And this is because each of them display different behaviors. Boomslang are tree-living snakes, and it's important to show that that's what their natural behavior is. Puff adders want to hide away, and cobras rely on hooding to be able to show that they're trying to defend themselves. One of the things we did through our project was also run surveys. And surveys are a really great way to be able to monitor conservation projects. And so when we created it, I wasn't really thinking that it would become such an important part of what we do, not just because of its relevance to our project in South Africa, but on a global scale. And now, being part of so many other projects and seeing the work that other projects, other people are doing around the world, especially being able to use surveys to measure this impact of their work, is going to become such an important tool when we essentially make a case for why people need to conserve snakes. So one of the things we also then, discuss is that, we find snakes all around the world. So they're really an important part of our environment. They're also quite really resilient. And it's often quite interesting to talk about, the fact that they're reptilians that have evolved from dinosaurs, and most, especially in the communities that we work in, it's often not what people think about at all. Their immediate reaction is, oh, okay, it's a snake, it must be killed, because someone somewhere along the line told them about that. And so we discussed this important relationship between people and nature, and how nature is being depleted. The snakes are losing their natural habitats, and so that's why they are coming into people's homes. And of course, this is why people are getting killed. Snakes are being killed, and people being bitten in the process. And because of this, it became quite obvious in our education work that most people don't even know what species they're living around. And not just people in the communities, but even people in the towns. I think when you really start looking into it, even the everyday person works on other species, other wildlife, they often don't know how to identify different snake species. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the really cool snake species that we have here in South Africa. So we have about 114 different snake species, and only 11%, which is at about 13 of those, are actually considered medically important and highly venomous. So if you've been bitten by them, it's important to seek medical attention. But over 80 of those snakes are actually non-venomous. But one of the things about African snakes is that they tend to hide away. So it's not that easy to find snakes, as easy as it is especially in America and Australia. And so when people encounter snakes, it's just, a venomous snake, and it's a snake that must be killed. And so when I mentioned that we do some work with medical professionals, even medical professionals don't actually know the differences between the different snakes. And so we do some identification, snake identification education. And this is really a useful way to really connect to anybody. So I'm going to start off with the black mamba, which is a neurotoxic snake. And most people know black mambas, right? Because they're the most charismatic species that we have in Africa. Um, they've got this typical coffin-shaped head, this black-gray mouth. They are elapids, so they have front fixed fangs. They can also spread a hood. I think not many people know that about black mambas. It's also really cool when they are able to display that hood. They, of course, gape when they feel threatened, active in the day. And of course, they grow fairly long. And it's part of the reason why people think that black mambas chase people. It's also one of the snakes that people think everything is a black mamba. So it's something we have to, it's something that we have to talk about quite often. And it's because we're all about building these relationships with people. We like to listen to these stories, and and then we do the proper education about how, you know, the snake was probably not trying to chase you, probably just trying to escape. Another neurotoxic snake we get is a snouted cobra. As I mentioned, snouted cobras typically spread this hood when they are defending themselves. They can also be grow quite long in the areas that I live. This, of course, differs in different parts of the country. One of the lesser known snakes that we have, which also has neurotoxic venom, is called a shield nose snake. Now these snakes like to pretend like they're a cobra, and they raise their bodies. Of course, mambas do that as well, just so you're aware. But these snakes tend to be quite secretive, and bites are not really known from these species. Next up, we have the puff adder. The puff adders are also probably another one of our very charismatic snake species, and they've got cytotoxic venom, which means that it will affect the cells of your body. Puff adders are typically active at night. They make this hissing sound when they are defending themselves, especially when people or any other predator gets too close to them. That they just have a large variation of camouflage, and they're really, really good at hiding in different environments. Probably one of my favorite species, and I can't quite tell you why, but it's the Mozambique spitting cobra. They are very cool little snakes, and they primarily rely on spitting to be able to defend themselves. But like other cobras, they also spread a hood. They've also got this similar banding around the hood, like snouted cobras and a couple of other cobras. But they're largely defined by having this dark black outline around their scales. And they're mostly active at night, but they are increasingly becoming active kind of early mornings and late in the evenings. And something they're known a lot for is going into people's homes and actually biting them. As I mentioned, they can spit venom up to about 3 meters away. One of our really cool snakes that we have are stiletto snakes. We have 2 in South Africa. This one's the most common. This one's also notorious for being able to, or being responsible for taking some digits away, because there's no safe way to hold the snake, because they've got they're front fanged, but they've got these side stabbing fangs. And this is because they're fossorial, so they live on the ground, and so they've evolved these really unique fangs to be able to um, eat their prey or envenomate their prey underground. Um, and most often people confuse them with other black snakes. So something like this purple gloss snake, which are quite common in certain areas. And so if someone doesn't know what they're doing and they pick up a black snake and they think it's a stiletto, they're most likely to get bitten. And then we have worm slung, which are also quite prominently known. They've got hemotoxic venom. Worm slung are defined or kind of known by this large round pupil in their eyes. They're quite active in the day, and in my part of the world, most people see a green snake and think it's a green mamba when it's very likely to be a worm slung. Worm slung haven't really been featured in snake bites a lot in the past. It is changing a little bit now. But there's a lot of interesting things when it comes to snakes and humans that we are only now starting to understand. We also have a really cool snake called a twig snake or a southern vine snake. They are also hemotoxic. One of the really cool things about them is that they look like branches, and so they camouflage really well in the environment. And they've got this really cool red tongue. But bites from these species are not known at all. But it's, again, just mindful to know about these things. And one of the snake species that actually gets killed most often is this non-venomous brown house snake. But as the name suggests, they tend to be in homes a lot. So people are most afraid of them, and they see this snake coming into their home and they feel very scared, and so they are killed, unfortunately. But when I like to do my education work, I also like to use other really cool examples. So living in kind of rural South Africa, you get to see some really cool encounters. Something like the spotted bush snake being bitten by a gecko. So you don't really get to see that often. So this was actually in the enclosure of the Nile crocodile at the snake park. Long story short, the gecko eventually let go of the spotted bush snake, and everyone was left unharmed. But it's really cool to be able to show the public, that these kinds of things are actually happening in the real world. Stuff that you might only see in documentaries. Another really cool experience that I had was with this Mozambique spitting cobra in my garden. And this entire event kind of took place over a week. This spitting cobra was looking for a nice little hole to be able to shed its skin, something we talk to people about quite a lot, because most often when snakes are trying to find, or people find snakes in their home, it's often because they're trying to shed their skin. So they're just looking for a nice little spot to hide. And so with this Mozambique spitting cobra, it just hung out in this little hole. It came out during the day to get some sun. And it was really just wonderful to be able to kind of experience this over a week. It comes from having this inclination to learn more about what these snake species are doing, about their behaviors, but it also, when you talk about it to the public, it's important to show them that it's quite significant to sit back and just watch and observe these animals. We do that with so many other animals, so why not with snakes? This was probably one of my favorite um, observations. One afternoon, some of the staff at the snake park heard some birds alarm calling. And so quickly got my camera out and went to watch this vine snake um, feeding on this fledgling black-capped bulbul. And this whole event took place over about 2.5 hours, where the vine snake kind of um, managed to get the hold of the fledgling, but the parents kept mobbing at the snake. Um, and then the fledgling fell down to the ground. And I thought the snake was going to give up, but the snake kind of moved its head around and looked down to see where the prey had fallen, and then made its way back down. Actually managed to get hold of the prey. I thought it would actually eat the bird, um, but the snake was trying to pull the fledgling back up into the tree, and so the fledgling got caught in some of the branches, and then fell back down again. And so, as what happens in many natural history observations, the snake was left without a meal, and the dead fledgling was on the ground. Um, but yeah, it was really cool to be able to um, see this event happening in front of me. Some other really cool species that I've been able to see are garter snakes. I know you in America are probably familiar with other garter snakes. We've got some really cool garter snakes as well. They are venomous species, but mildly venomous, and they also have these really cool variations um, in color. We've also got snouted night adders, which are venomous snake species. They don't really feature in snake bites that often, but it's better not to touch them. And then we've also got these really cool um, things called centipede eaters. And it's what's been really cool for me is that all the species that I worked or many of the species that I worked with in my master's project, I've actually been able to see now in the field. And there's actually something really cool about being able to experience that. Just to highlight some of the other species that I've been able to see, things like egg eaters, brown house snakes. Brown house snakes, again, tend to be quite common around the country. You tend to see them coming out quite often more often than a lot of the other snake species as well. We've also got a tiger snake, but this is an eastern tiger snake, mildly venomous species. And of course, our tiger snakes are a lot smaller than the Australian kind. We've also got some really weird, interesting things like East African shovel snouts. When I think about, booping the snoot on a snake, this is the snake that comes to mind. And then we've got some really other cool species like the western yellow-bellied sand snakes. And these snakes are really fast. So the minute you see them and they get startled, they are off. Really difficult to actually get photographs of them. So I'm lucky that I managed to get that. So one of the things I also did when I moved to Hoedspruit was start my PhD. I was still registered at BITS with Graham, and we kind of came up with this really cool project to test out biting behavior and the striking behavior in several venomous snake species. And so this was my little setup. We used this fake and to elicit a strike in 4 different snake species. So I used the puff adder. We had about 6 individuals of them. Black mambas, about 14 individuals. Mozambique spitting cobras, as well as snouted cobras. So I have a few really quick videos of their striking and biting behavior. So of the 6 different individuals, 4 actually struck the arm and 3 bit the arm. But what was really interesting is that snakes were only really biting and striking in the second trial compared to the first trial. Showed that they were really tolerant. This was with the black mambas. The 10 of the 14 bit, only 6, 10 of the 14 struck, but only 6 of the 14 actually bit the arm. But again, it's very similar pattern where it's in the second trial that snakes were largely showing this more defensive behavior by striking and biting. And this is with the snouted cobra. 3 of the 7 individuals bit, was struck, and 2 of them bit. And again, even with the snouted cobra, the individuals chose to bite and strike in the second trial more than the first trial. And this really shows that snakes are quite tolerant of harassment, which is really important when we're doing our education work. Surprisingly, with our Mozambique spitting cobras, there was no striking or biting, and 16 of the 21 individuals spat. Of course, they primarily defend themselves by spitting. But again, with the spitting as well, they were mostly spitting in the second trial over the first trial. So this tells us a lot about snake behavior, which is what we wanted. So snakes will bite when they're in close proximity, but they'll only really bite and strike when they are feeling threatened and they don't have a way of escape. In most cases, if they had an opportunity to flee, they definitely chose to flee rather than bite or strike. And of course, biting means that they're expending venom, which they really don't necessarily want to do. And it's very likely that snakes are biting people through these human-snake interactions. And we know that these interactions are increasing because of natural habitats being lost. And so what do we do with this knowledge? It's important that we share it with the world. I'm very lucky that I can do that with my work at Save the Snakes, with our education project, and also being able to just talk about it on the webinar today. I mean, Snake Week was created for this reason, so that we can talk about these important things about the snakes, and what we can do to be able to share this with the world. Another really cool place that I share some of my awesome snakes knowledge is a really cool podcast called Squamates. Those are my 3 co-hosts, Mark, Ethan, and Gabriel. And we released a very special episode for World Snake Day 2 days ago. And it's on platforms like this that we also share the importance of snakes, but also the valuable research being done and how we can communicate that to the public. And it's important that we are able to do that. We live in a world where we now have more resources to be able to do that. And it's really exciting. I was also a part of a really cool book called Women in Herpetology, and being able to share my journey in a place like that, to be able to inspire people to work in herpetology. I think that's essentially how we're really going to be able to make a difference. Um, and so with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to share some of the work that I do, and I've got lots more to come. So maybe in a couple of years, I'll be giving another presentation of all the cool things that I'll be doing. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hiral. That was really great. I really loved how you told us about a little bit about yourself and you told us about some of the awesome African snakes that I'm dying to see. So thank you very much. Folks, please put your questions in the chat and I'm going to start asking those to Hiral right now. Okay. First question actually came a little bit earlier in your presentation when you were talking about the Mozambique spitting cobra. Um, is it known why they are becoming more active during the daytime? Is it related to climate change or anything like that?
We don't have any knowledge or any data to really show that. Chances are that resources are probably changing. It's also a generalist species, so it eats all kinds of things. So if its diet is potentially shifting, it could be because of that. But yeah, I mean, one of the things I didn't mention is that funding on snakes is is limited. So some of the really cool things that we'd love to be able to do, and especially on African snakes, yeah, we haven't been able to do just yet.
Thank you. Someone was curious about when you're doing your education efforts, how often do you encounter individuals or groups who are fully opposed to showing any respect to snakes?
Not that often, really. We do see quite a difference between teachers and younger students. The teachers tend to be a lot more afraid, but most of them are very open to at least learning a little bit about snakes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that so many of us who have worked with kids a lot know that the fear of snakes is not inborn and that it's learned, at least mostly learned. So I agree with you entirely. A question here is, are you familiar with the African rock python that predated an adult hyena? And have you ever witnessed a large constrictor attacking other large carnivores?
No, I'm not aware of that. And it's also, I mean, I would probably say unlikely. Yeah. Our snakes, even the Southern African pythons, even though they get quite big, it's very unlikely that they'll try and go after such predators. Perhaps some juvenile mammals, but we haven't necessarily seen these observations. If you do have information on that and would like to send it to me, I'd be happy to have a look.
Sounds great, Sean. Send that information to Harel. Question from me. Can you tell us a little bit about what Save the Snakes is up to right now with respect to snake conservation
Yeah, great question. So we're in the foundational stages of developing some really cool education models. And part of that means setting up some collaborations with people in different parts of the world. So yeah, creating some unique ways that people can get educated. But essentially the idea is to elevate the way we're doing education, being able to use the data from our conservation partners and showcase the work that they're doing, and providing evidence from their work to somewhere like the IUCN to be able to do something bigger when it comes to snake conservation.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And anyone who's listening, Save the Snakes is a nonprofit based here in California that funds research and conservation efforts all over the world. I'm a monthly donor for them, so I encourage you to also make some donations to Save the Snakes, which is one of the most impactful nonprofits out there. There's a bunch of other ones that many of whom are partners, and that you can find them on our website, snakeweek.org. And so with that, we're going to finish up for today. So thank you again so much, Hiral. We really appreciated it. It was awesome. To anyone who's here, all of these recordings are going to be available on our Snake Week YouTube channel, and we will email you a link with all of those when Snake Week is all finished. So long live the snakes, and thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye bye.